Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjansalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Dharamati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Anvitamscha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Panchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Avacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhansute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasa Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Śrīla Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta Volume 2 Chapter 41 The Battle for Bombay. Vrindavan, October 17, 1972. Prabhupada had come to Vrindavan to observe the Kartik season from October 16 to November 14. He planned to lecture daily at the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami in the courtyard of Radha Damodar temple, speaking from the Nectar of Devotion, with his own translation of Rupa Goswami book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. On his western tour, he had invited devotees to join him for Kartik in Vrindavan, and now a few dozen devotees from America, Europe, India, and other parts of the world had gathered to be with him. He was concerned with developing his Vrindavan project, so rather than immediately rushing to Bombay, he had come here first, sending some of his leading disciples to tackle the problems in Bombay. Now, like a general engaged on a different front, he awaited word from his lieutenant in Bombay. He moved into his two small rooms at the Radha Damodar temple, while his disciples stayed nearby in former palace of Maharaj of Bharatpur, an old building near the Yamuna. Although Prabhupada was introducing his disciples to Vrindavan, he was also introducing the residents of Vrindavan to his disciples. Already his group was encountering some of the same attitudes Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and his party of pilgrims had met in 1932, the people's refusal to accept low-born persons as Vaishnavas. Prabhupada trusted, however, that if his disciples could construct a wonderful temple for Krishna and Balaram, the hearts of the Vrindavan residents would change and they would accept his disciples. He tolerated the roughness and slowness of his disciples, and when Vrindavan residents came to see him, he humbly requested they also overlook his disciples' faults and recognize them as genuine devotees of Krishna. After all, they had given up sinful life and were regularly chanting the holy names of God. Prabhupada lectured both morning and evening, sitting on a simple asana about 2 feet high, a bare bulb suspended over his head. Prabhupada would address his disciples and the few interested guests who sat before him. Some of the devotees had speculated that since they were now in Vrindavan, Prabhupada would probably talk on highly elevated spiritual topics such as Krishna's rasa with gopis. But it was not so. Rather, one of his disciples would read from the nectar of devotion, and Prabhupada would interject extensive philosophical comments on attaining pure love of Krishna through the successive stages of Bhakti Yoga. While Prabhupada's talks were especially for his disciples, he also stressed that the Brahmanas of India accept the Western Vaishnavas, and he cited dozens of scriptural references to prove his point that birth status, being a material designation, did not apply in spiritual life. Stressing preaching as the essence of Krishna consciousness, he urged the disciples present to continue propagating the Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada's disciples were thrilled by these talks, and by Prabhupada's personal dealings with them in the intimate atmosphere of his rooms at Radha Damodar temple, which he referred to as his eternal residence, the place where he had actually begun his plans for the Krishna consciousness movement. His disciples could hear him rise early and begin translating Srimad Bhagavatam, dictating his purports. At Arati time, he would open the shutters of his room and behold the deities. At other times, the devotees might see him walking on the terrace chanting japa, and they found him always available to answer their questions and help them with their personal problems. Tamal Krishna Goswami, Shyamasundara, and Karandhara arrived in Bombay. Things had worsened, Giriraj informed them. When Mr. N had seen the notice in the newspaper publicly advising that ISKCON had entered into an agreement for the Juhu property, he had become furious. Giriraj had gone to him with folded hands and bowed down before him, but Mr. N would not be appeased. He had gone back on all his promises and had cancelled the sale agreement on the plea that the devotees had not obtained the deed within a 6-month period. The 2 lakh down payment he had claimed was now his, and the devotees should vacate the land immediately. Mr. N had shut off the world water supply to Hare Krishna land. Several days later, a hoodlum had shown up at the entrance of the property, brandishing a machete whenever devotees passed by. A friend of Mr. N had printed a handbill ascribing scandalous behavior to the American Hare Krishna devotees and was having it distributed at the nearby Vili-Parle train station. Although a few devotees had left and others wanted to, about 30 devotees still remained in Bombay. The first thing to do, Karandhar said, was to find a new lawyer, and he went to Bombay's most prominent solicitors and hired a specialist in land transactions and conveyances. Next, the leading devotees and their solicitor met with Mr. N in his office. Mr. N was stubborn and uncooperative, and the ISKCON lawyer was threatening. A court battle seemed inevitable. Tamal Krishna Goswami, Karandhar, and Bhavananda and Shyamasundara talked together, and the more they talked, the more they began to see the entire Jew scheme as impossible. Even without Mr. N's treachery, just to live on the land was very difficult. The devotees and the deities had such poor living facilities that the roof leaked and the cement floor was crumbling. Rats, flies, cockroaches, village dogs, and mosquitoes infested the place, with even an occasional poisonous snake. Devotees were always contracting tropical diseases, especially malaria and hepatitis. So, although ISKCON's new lawyer was prepared to take the case to court, the devotees were hesitant. Mr. N had said that they, not he, were criminals because they had not gotten permission from the charity commissioner. They were on his land illegally. He said he would sue for damages. He even seemed to be on the verge of some violent action. Considering all angles, the leaders whom Prabhupada had entrusted to solve the Jew entanglement decided that ISKCON should relinquish the land. Drafting a joint letter to Śrīla Prabhupada, they had Shyamasundar hand deliver it to him in Vrindavan. Sitting in his room at Radha Damodar temple, Śrīla Prabhupada read the letter from Bombay and then set it aside. He walked out into the open courtyard. In the last light of day, many birds were chirping, and the devotees sat on the ground on a durry waiting. Prabhupada sat on the simple raised seat and began singing Jai Radha Madhava. He had Pradyumna read, stopping him to explain a point whenever he felt inclined. He spoke of special benefit of residing in Vrindavan, but warned that one should not come to the dham to do business or to commit any offences. If, however, a Vrindavan resident did commit an offence, he could still receive the special benefits provided he remained sticking to the dust of Vrindavan. Night fell, and in the dark courtyard, Prabhupada continued lecturing beneath the dim electric bulbs. Visiting pilgrims came and went, watching the Swamiji lecturing in English to his Western disciples. After the question and answer period, Prabhupada walked back to his room, exchanging words along the way with Gaurachandra Goswami, Gaurachand Goswami, the temple proprietor. Some devotees lingered in Prabhupada's room, and many Indians peered through the barred windows, although they had never cared to look years ago, before the room's permanent resident, Bhakti Vedanta Swami, had gone to America. When Prabhupada was finally alone, he began to think of Bombay. Although hundreds of miles away, the occurrences there were beating on his heart here in Vrindavan. He took out his copy of agreement he had signed with Mr. N. Then he called his secretary and began dictating a letter to his leaders in Bombay. He began his letter like a lawyer, answering logically point by point. One reason his disciples had given for wanting to give up the land was the charity commissioner had refused them permission. On that case, Prabhupada reasoned they should try to get back the money and give up the land. But it appeared that the charity commissioner's permission was delayed, not denied, a small matter. Although Mr. N had mentioned a 6-month time limit for obtaining the charity commission's approval, Prabhupada pointed out the original agreement mentioned no such time limit. Another reason Prabhupada's men had given for wanting to relinquish the land was that, according to Mr. N, they had failed to obtain the conveyance within 6 months. As per the original sales agreement, Prabhupada replied that, according to the clause in question, it is our option to rescind the contract within 6 months, not the vendors. But the real point was that Mr. N had accepted checks worth 1 lakh rupees as down payment within 6 months, and therefore the sale agreement was completed. We considered that he has completed the conveyance and we did not want to rescind, but we shall close the deal immediately. Finished, that's all. He is trying to avoid these issues by tricks, and he has dominated you, and you are little afraid of him, and he has fooled you to think he is in superior legal position so that you will give him some money. But this is cheating. We should not give him any more money. Don't pay him any more. First of all, bring a criminal case against him. So why you should be disappointed and afraid of him? Our position is very, very strong. Rupa? Yeah. Therefore, I say that you boys cannot deal very well in these matters because you are too timid. Now, whatever you like, you may do. Immediately, criminal case should be taken. That you are not doing because he is bluffing you. He says big words and makes threats, and you believe him foolishly and do like this, like he says. That I shall not do. Prabhupada's conclusive advice was the devotees go to the magistrate and tell him, we give Mr. N money and now he is threatening. Rupa, give me 1 second. So therefore, I say that you boys cannot deal very well in these matters because you are too timid. Now, whatever you like, you may do. Immediate criminal case should be taken. That you are not doing because he is bluffing you. He says big words and makes threats, and you believe him foolishly and do like he says. That I shall not do. Prabhupada's conclusive advice was that devotees go to magistrate and tell him, we gave Mr. N money and now he is threatening violence to drive us away. They should not be afraid. Prabhupada had not come to Vrindavan only to lecture. He wanted to begin construction on his new property. And the news from Bombay didn't distract him from his purpose. Every day he would have the devotees hold a Sankirtan procession from Radha Damodar temple to property at Radha Raman Redhi. He would also go out occasionally to see the site, still nothing more than grass huts, a wire fence, and a small stock of building material. Subala, the disciple in charge of construction, was slow and reluctant, and Prabhupada sent for Tamal Krishna Goswami to come from Bombay and take charge. Early one morning, Subala left the land at Raman Redhi, where he had been staying, and approached Srila Prabhupada on the roof of Radha Damodar temple. Prabhupada, he said, I am having so much difficulty. I don't have time to read. I can't chant my rounds properly. I can't think of Krishna. I am always thinking of how this contractor is cheating us, or I am thinking of signing checks for labor and material. It's just too much. All these things on my mind are stopping me from thinking of Krishna. Do you think Arjuna was simply meditating on Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? Prabhupada replied. Do you think Arjuna was sitting in yogic trance while on the battlefield Krishna worked? No, he was fighting. He was killing for Krishna. He was thinking of all the soldiers he had to kill for Krishna. Thinking of the checkbook, thinking of men, thinking of contractor. This is also like Arjuna's thinking. This is Krishna's service. You should not worry about thinking of Krishna directly. Arjuna wasn't sitting before Krishna in a trance meditating on his form. He was engaged in Krishna's service. Similarly, this is Krishna's service and you should engage. Your life is full of Krishna's service and this is very good. Subala was still unsatisfied. He complained to Prabhupada that other devotees wouldn't cooperate with him. He wanted to go into seclusion in Vrindavan for the rest of his life and chant instead of becoming a full-time preacher in ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada asked, what do you mean? No one will listen to you? You think that means they are defective? No, you are defective. Prabhupada raised his voice. If you are preaching and no one will listen, don't think you should go away in disgust and save yourself by chanting. No, that is not our line. We must qualify ourselves so they will listen. Do you know the story of Mr. Beecham? Subala shook his head. No one would buy this medicine, Prabhupada continued. So he became anxious. Still he tried, and one day a man approached him in his shop and asked if he had any Beecham's powder. And in excitement that someone had asked for his medicine, he died. Similarly, better we spend our whole life and die just to make one person Krishna conscious. That is our line. To become so absorbed in preaching Krishna, whether in Vrindavan or anywhere, we must save all these asuras from destroying the world. In stressing active service and practical results, Srila Prabhupada was exactly following the teaching and example of his spiritual master. According to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, to chant in a secluded place and not preach was a cheating process. Devotional service meant practical work for Krishna. The simple positive way to control the senses was to engage them fully in service of Krishna. Active service was the topmost yoga, Prabhupada told Subala, a fact that he had repeatedly explained in his books. In the recently published second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he had written, here it is clearly mentioned that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were extensively busy in hard labor of their day's work. And due to the day's hard labor, they were engaged in sound sleep at night. So practically they had very little time to devote to meditation or to the other paraphernalia of spiritual activities. But factually, they were engaged in the highest spiritual activities only. Everything done by them was spiritualized because everything was detailed in the relationship with Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna. The central point of the activities was Krishna, and as such, the so called activities in the material world were saturated with spiritual potency. That is the advantage of the way of Bhakti Yoga. One should discharge one's duty on Lord Krishna's behalf, and all one's actions will be saturated with Krishna thought, the highest pattern of trance in spiritual realization. As far as possible, Prabhupada engaged each disciple in a certain service according to the particular disciple's psycho-physical nature. But everyone had to take up some kind of work for Krishna. Since Prabhupada desired to build a temple in Vrindavan, then whoever would help him to do it, whether they were trained or not, or whether it was their tendency or not, whoever offered him assistance would become very dear to him and to Lord Krishna. When a householder couple, Gurudas and Yamuna, agreed to remain in Vrindavan to help Prabhupada build the temple, Prabhupada welcomed it and shared with them the intentions of his plan. If you can construct a nice temple in Vrindavan for me in this way, I shall be eternally grateful. Because we are a worldwide movement of Krishna, and if we do not have a nice place at Vrindavan, then what will be the use? Vrindavan is Krishna's land, and in the future, many of our disciples will go there just to see, along with many tourists and other friends. So therefore, we must have sufficient place for them. I know that you are not trained up for being construction manager. Neither that job must be very tasteful to you, but because you are sincere devotees of Krishna, He is giving you all strength and intelligence how to do it. That is what we want. That is advancement in Krishna consciousness. By the time Prabhupada and most of his disciples left Vrindavan at the end of Kartik, relations between his disciples and residents of Vrindavan had improved. The people of Vrindavan were impressed by devotees' daily Sankirtan procession to Ramanareti, and they were impressed by Prabhupada. Although Prabhupada felt that much time had been wasted, it had been a year since Mr. S had offered them the land. He was now hopeful. ISKCON's projects were developing all over the world, and all were struggling. The devotees' only means of income was from the sale of books and and to some degree from their spiritual sky incense business. As yet, Prabhupada had no architectural plan for his Vrindavan project, but he determined to gather from his book fund and from devotees enough money for materials and labor. One day he went to the building site and asked a devotee to mix a little cement, and with his own hand he laid down the first concrete for the foundation. Hyderabad, November 11, 1972. Prabhupada had come to Hyderabad for a Pandal program. Big crowds attended his lectures, and wherever he went, even while getting into and out of his car, people surrounded him to touch his lotus feet. Although Hyderabad had been suffering from drought a few days after Prabhupada's arrival, rains came. One newspaper suggested that the Harinam Kirtan Srila Prabhupada and his devotees performed so enthusiastically must have ended the drought. Prabhupada agreed. Srila Prabhupada met with Mr. N, who was visiting Hyderabad from Bombay. Shyam Sundar still had a cordial relationship with Mr. N because Mr. N had been fond of his 3-year-old daughter Saraswati. So he went to Mr. N and convinced him to speak to Prabhupada. Mr. N agreed, but being suspicious that Prabhupada might try to use mystic power to persuade him to do something against his will, he brought a guru with him, thinking the guru would counteract Prabhupada's spiritual power. Mr. N, his guru, and Shyamsundar all came to the home of Pani Lal Preeti, where Prabhupada was staying. Prabhupada met informally with his guests, conversing with them over prasadam until he yawned, and Mr. N's guru said, "Oh Swami, you must be very tired. We should not disturb you now. You should rest and we may talk later." "Oh yes," Prabhupada replied, "I am very tired." So Mr. N and his guru excused themselves and retired to the adjoining room. After a few minutes, Prabhupada called Tamal Krishna Goswami into his room. "When someone asks you if you are tired," Prabhupada said, "it means he is tired. If you go into the other room, you will see that they are sleeping." He instructed Tamal Krishna to carefully awaken Mr. N without disturbing his guru and bring him here. Tiptoeing into the room, Tamal Krishna found both Mr. N and his guru asleep on the beds. He went over to Mr. N, touched his arm, and said quietly, Mr. N, wake up. Prabhupada would like to speak with you. Come quickly." Mr. N, being rose from his slumber, obediently walked into Prabhupada's room, forgetting his guru's friend. For 2 hours, Prabhupada talked with Mr. N, and by end of discussion, they had worked out a new sales agreement. Tamal Krishna and Shamsundar, working in a separate room, drafted and typed the document, while Prabhupada and Mr. N settled the final legal points. Then Mr. N signed the agreement, while his guru friend. Later that day, Tamal Krishna confided to Śrīla Prabhupada, "I am so disturbed by these dealings that I can't chant my rounds properly." "That is natural," Prabhupada replied. "Sometimes when we are disturbed, sometimes when I am disturbed, I also. But I can see that I am making spiritual advancement. Even so," Tamal Krishna admitted. Prabhupada nodded. "I used to think how to avoid difficult situations," Tamal Krishna said. "But now I think I should not run away from them." "Yes," said Prabhupada. "We should welcome these. They give us an opportunity to advance more." Shyama and Tamal Krishna Goswami flew back to Bombay with Mr. N that afternoon. According to the new terms, ISKCON would pay Mr. N 5 lakh of rupees for the government tax, and in return, Mr. N would execute the deed. But there was also a new time limit, 3 weeks, and the devotees would have to work fast. Prabhupada himself would soon come to Bombay to settle the matter once and for all. Bombay, November 25th, 1972. Although Prabhupada had come to Bombay with hopes of finishing the land transaction, Mr. N was still delaying despite the new agreements. Obviously, his stalling was simply part of his plan to cheat ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada waited many days in Bombay, finally departing for a Pandal program in Ahmedabad. He left behind instructions for his disciples to get the deed on the new terms or else to take back the original 2 lakh of rupees paid as the down payment. While Srila Prabhupada was away, however, Shyamsundara, Tamal Krishna, Goswami, and others began talking about how even if they could one day get the deed to Tuhu property, to develop Hare Krishna land the way Prabhupada had envisioned would be practically impossible. Shyamsundar argued that even if they got the land, how could they really expect to build a big temple and hotel out here in the jungle? It just wouldn't work. Meanwhile, from Ahmedabad, Prabhupada continued to wage his Bombay campaign, and he requested Mr. N and Mr. D to come to Ahmedabad to try and make a settlement. They declined. In Bombay, the devotees learned that if they wanted to get back their down payment as well as the money they have deposited toward the 5 lakh gains tax, then they would have to cancel the new agreement. They were confused and their time was running out. One morning, one of Prabhupada's disciples, Vishakha Devi Dasi, arrived in Ahmedabad from Bombay. Prabhupada called for her and told her to return to Bombay immediately with a message. Out of concern that his leaders in Bombay not make a wrong decision and decide to relinquish the land, he told her to tell them that they should not, under any circumstances, cancel the agreement with Mr. N. Actually, he said, this is not a woman's job, but everyone else here is either engaged in Pandal or has not been with us long enough to do this task. Vishakha took the next train out of Ahmedabad and arrived in Bombay the following morning. But what Prabhupada had foreseen had already happened. The devotees had cancelled the sales agreement. They were convinced that to get the land would be a mistake, and their lawyer had agreed pointing out that if the devotees wanted to retrieve their money, they should cancel the agreement immediately. When the devotees heard Prabhupada's message from Ahmedabad, confusion reigned. They now had no legal standing, no claim to the land, and they had failed to carry out Prabhupada's desire. Giriraj phoned Prabhupada in Ahmedabad to tell him what had happened. Bhaktivedanta Swami here, Prabhupada said as he took the telephone. Giriraj was saying that a devotee had come from Ahmedabad with a message. Yes, yes, Prabhupada said. What is the point? Finally, Giriraj blurted out that they had cancelled the sales agreement. Prabhupada was silent. Then, in a voice that expressed in a voice that expressed both anger and resignation, he said, "They mute, mute. Then everything is finished. I shall do the last man. I shall be the last man to give up the Hare Krishna land to rogues." Mr. N. Prabhupada wrote to a life member just before leaving Ahmedabad for Bombay. Prabhupada was now immediately planning how to rectify his disciples' mistakes. No money had yet been transferred, so perhaps it was not too late. Mr. N could not possibly understand why Prabhupada was so determined in his fight to keep the Juhu land. Now, it's okay, bro. Yes, I'm broken. Not that Prabhupada had kept his motives hidden, but only a devotee can understand the mind or actions of another devotee. Mr. N was dealing with Prabhupada just as he had dealt with C company. He had cheated them, and now he would cheat ISKCON. He could only surmise that Prabhupada and his disciples were driven by the same motive as he himself. The only motive he could understand, material possessiveness. Actually, even Prabhupada's disciples were having difficulty understanding Prabhupada's unbreakable determination. Prabhupada's main motive was to preach Krishna consciousness in Bombay. So the Prabhupada said, "My Guru Maharaj ordered me to preach Krishna consciousness in the West, and I have done that. Now I want to preach in India." Bombay was the most important city in India, the gateway, and within Bombay, Krishna had somehow led Prabhupada to this land, where he had begun preaching and had brought the deities of Radha and Krishna. In Prabhupada's eyes, the land was suitable for the large, gorgeous temple and international hotel he had planned. Bombay was an important city and required grand temple worship, large festivals, mass prasadam distribution, and a variety of Vedic cultural programs. The Juhu land seemed ideal for a school, a theatre, a library, apartments, a Hare Krishna city. So how could Prabhupada retreat from his this rogue who was trying to cheat him? There would always be persons opposed to Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said. But that did not mean that devotees should give in. A preacher had to be tolerant, and sometimes when all else failed and Krishna's interest was at stake, he had to fight. Another reason Prabhupada refused to give up was this particular plot of land was that he had promised the deities Radha Rasavihari. He had invited Krishna here and prayed, "Dear sir, please stay here, and I will build you a beautiful temple." When Prabhupada had been touring and a devotee from Bombay had written him that the deities were being neglected, Prabhupada had written back insisting that these abominable activities be rectified. The deities of Krishna was not a stone statue, but was actually Krishna, eager to reciprocate with his sincere devotees. So, if if using the land for missionary work was the obvious or external reason for Prabhupada's determination to keep his Hare Krishna land, then the internal reason was his personal commitment to their Lordship Sri Sri Radha Rasabihari. Certainly, Mr. N and his associates could never understand this. Even Prabhupada's own disciples could not realize it fully. Prabhupada had brought Radha and Krishna into very poor conditions, but with the promise of something wonderful to come. At his request, Radha and Krishna had come, and they were standing patiently, giving eternal benediction to their worshippers while Prabhupada struggled to fulfill his promise. 500 years ago, each of six Goswamis in Vrindavan had had his own deity for whom he had built a beautiful temple. But Prabhupada was empowered to install and maintain many deities. In his Western world headquarters were the opulent Rukmini Dwarakadish, in New York, Radha Govind, in Dallas, Big Radha Kalchanda Ji, on a traveling bus in America with Kirtananda Swami and Vishnujan Swami were Radha Damodar. In London, Radha Landaneshwar. In Mayapur, Radha Madhava. And in Australia, Radha Gopinath. All were Prabhupada's worshipable deities. Archa Vigraha, incarnations of Radha and Krishna, appearing at the request of their pure devotee for the benefit of neophyte devotees in various places around the world. To establish many deities was one of Srila Prabhupada's prime contributions as a world preacher. And when he would visit each temple, he would always stand reverentially before the deities, taking their blessings, and then he would offer prostrated obeisances. Be humble, he would instruct the devotees. Always remember you are dealing with Krishna. And sometimes he would be unable to suppress his ecstatic symptoms of love for the deities. Through his representatives, his many disciples, he worshipped all these deities, but in the case of Radha Rasvihari, his involvement was more direct. Having taken India as his own managerial duty, he considered caring for this deity his specific responsibility. Prabhupada's fighting spirit to keep the land was so keen that he sometimes appeared to be fighting for fighting's sake. He sometimes even compared Mr. N to the demon Kamsa in Srimad Bhagavatam, who had repeatedly tried to kill Krishna. Just as Kamsa has employed many minor demons in his attempts to kill Krishna, so Mr. N has employed demonic agents like lawyers, friends, and hoodlums. Krishna's killing of demons like Kamsa was his pastime or Leela, he enjoyed it. And Prabhupada, as a servant of Krishna, was fully absorbed in this fighting. He was vigilant, militant. When Mr. N bluffed or frightened the devotees, causing them to back down, Prabhupada held his ground. He took naturally to the fight. Krishna and Krishna's mission were being challenged. Never before had Prabhupada been so threatened or met such active enemies. In New Delhi, when he had been selling his Back to Godhead magazines, he had often met with brushke words, and in America, people had ignored him and occasionally heckled him, but no one had seriously attempted to stop his preaching. Here, however, was a demon working actively to cheat him, to destroy his preaching, to disperse his disciples, and to displace his deity. He was forced to fight, and his disciples, if they were to understand his mood, would also have to fight. Prabhupada was acting as a protector and the parent of the deities and of ISKCON Bombay, and he had described in the Nectar of Devotion, many great devotees have an eternal relationship with Krishna as his protector. When, as a child, Krishna had fought the serpent Kaliya, Krishna's mother and father had been plunged into transcendental anxiety. They had seen their child entangled in the coils of serpents and, fearing for Krishna's life, had wanted to protect him. The eternal mother and father of Krishna always worry that Krishna may meet with harm, and when danger appears to come, their natural anxiety increases many times. In this way, they show the most intense love for Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's mood was to protect Radha Rasa Vihari and also his Krishna consciousness movement. Always, he knew that Krishna was supreme protector and that nobody could oppose his will. Out of a protective desire to spread Krishna's glories, he feared that the demon Mr. N might harm Krishna. Prabhupada's feelings of anxiety and protectiveness extended to his disciples also. Although out of duty, he often criticized and corrected them privately. Before others, he usually defended and praised them. When Dr. Patel, a Bombay physician, had criticized the way the devotees were living, not protecting themselves from mosquitoes, Prabhupada had said that because his devotees were liberated and did not identify with their bodies, such things did not trouble them. Prabhupada saw his disciples as children with little worldly experience. They did not know how to deal with rogues and could be easily tricked. But if the son was gullible, the father would have to be shrewd and strong to protect his family. As protector of devotees and of Krishna's mission, Prabhupada wanted to establish good housing so that his disciples could serve Krishna in comfort, even elegance. Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, had taught the same thing when he said that preachers of Krishna consciousness should have the best of everything because they were doing the best service to Krishna. Prabhupada was therefore determined to establish his Hare Krishna city in Bombay. He did not take the attitude of a naked mendicant who cares for nothing of this material world. He felt responsible for his thousands of disciples, and therefore he took on so many anxieties. Mr. N could not know what motives were driving Srila Prabhupada, nor could he imagine the full ramifications of opposing Krishna and Krishna's pure devotee, even though the danger of such opposition had been explained in India's most famous classics, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Ramayana. Prabhupada was fighting on the side of Krishna, therefore Mr. N was opposing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada, we'll stop here, we'll continue the remaining part next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. This was more like a thriller, Prabhuji. I was just looking for. I think I will complete this. Read up. It's very nice, and especially the cool head that Prabhupada maintained when N brought in his guru, saying that probably they are tired, and that because I think prior to this, Prabhuji, there was one couple of weeks back there was a section where we said like Prabhupada kind of leaned on a Prabhu, and he felt Prabhupada was like weighing very light like a doll. So he, after all this weakness, he does these great things. And I think especially for people like Makarand, who's also there on the call, who have seen this Juhu temple, this would be really goosebump moments. Knowing how Juhu was created, Prabhuji. Very inspiring, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, very nice. So after all, we can see the potency of a guru and the capacity of the most elevated disciples. Yeah, we were talking about Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, Giriraj Maharaj, Shyam Sundar Prabhu. All these are not ordinary. They are very, very close to Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada is of such a high caliber, definitely his disciples are also very, very experts in whatever situation they can be put in. But there is some Leela that we can understand here is about Prabhupada. This shows that how dear is Prabhupada to Sri Radha Rasvihari. This is one thing. Yeah, that he personally is taking care of the deities. And second thing is also, to show that when we take up a service, whatever may happen, we should give our best and keep on going. When Subala Prabhu, when he came to Prabhupada and said, I am too much into maintaining all the labor, cement, bills and all these things, Prabhupada is saying, you are doing the best thing. But when we are doing all this service, we think, is it not in the mode of passion, in the mode of ignorance? No, but in all this is also there is service directly to Krishna. So Prabhupada is not only telling, but he is also showing through his examples that Prabhupada can also say, hey, this is nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Land, kabja and all those things. We can simply say it's all mafia and I don't have. I am a sadhu. I am a sadhu means, yeah, if Krishna wants to give, I'll take. If he doesn't want to, I don't take. No, it's not like that. Prabhupada showed that we want preaching. Yeah, he was also saying that is priority, where we all go to our own contacts. Yeah, to tell them, hey, this is good for you. We are already enjoying it, so you can also enjoy that. So this is the spirit of preaching. And if you don't have a temple, how can you establish preaching strongly? Yeah, because people, yeah, of course, now we are doing home program and all those things, but just imagine the attention that one gets at a temple is different. They go, oh, it's a holy place, it's a powerful spiritual, yeah, and all those things that has so much. And you say, hey, this is not ordinary. In Germany, to have a temple is not so, oh, so they are great. So that kind of recognition will be there when there is a center. So in all this way, and gateway of India is Bombay. So even it should also be a spiritual gateway, and that's why Prabhupada, in so many ways, see, Bombay project cannot at any cost go from the hands. Yeah, it's unimaginable. I mean, you know how Bombay, if you not even now, a few years, many years back, if you are holding a wallet or if you are holding a suitcase, there is no guarantee that you will take home. Even without they can easily steal. So that is their what do you call natural habits. So they can very easily rob you like anything, steal you like anything, not standing on a word. All these things, so much degraded, Bombay. But at that same place is also so much money, so many people who are businessmen who can really become devotees. Because after all, after one comes to a stage of a number, it's only a number. What do they need? Comfort, status, everything is there. After that, whatever it is, 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 10 crore, doesn't matter. It's only a number. Now what they want is happiness. For that, they are ready to give anything. So that is also a reason why Prabhupada want at any cost that ISKCON is there in Bombay. And you know what? What can also happen is if Prabhupada is failing in India in first project, it will have its domino effect, because they see, hey, they are not genuine. That's the reason they have the Mr. N had backed off. Same will happen in Vrindavan. Also will happen in Mayapur. Everywhere. So Prabhupada, for him, it was life and soul, this project. Makarand Prabhu said it's there. Makarand Prabhu can tell more. He's coming from that Juhu temple only.
Yes, that was really if we go in that temple, Jewish ISKCON temple, you can feel different vibes. I would say the positive vibes over there, and you can lean to Krishna. And when you see the deity of Krishna, Radha and Krishna, oh, that was so amazing. And because while I was going, I was used to go to the Juhu temple, but I wasn't aware about this story. Last time I told everyone about it. But when I heard about the stories, it's lots of patience. I can see the lots of patience Prabhupada has, and he also have some positive things to get it done about this project, Mumbai project specifically. And yeah, Mumbai is really a gateway of India. So yeah, and spirituality of gateway of spirituality and everything. So yeah.
No. Is the hotel there near the temple? Whatever that we are reading, did it happen? I mean, anyway, we read now, we come to know.
Yeah. What you're saying about the hotel?
Yeah. Did it?
It's a big complex. I have seen. There is a staying facility also there in the same premises of the temple, and one where other things also there. So it's a big complex with having staying facility, temple, and also the other registrations and other offices also over there. So there are lot of things which is nearby in that premises. About the restaurant, I've about the hotel, most probably that is we are talking about the um, maybe the staying facility or something like that, because in I joined late this, so I was not aware about it, which hotel you're talking, but yeah,
Okay.
there are hotels near Juhu. So
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else would like to share? Okay. Then we close the call. Thank you very much for joining. Let's go to the thriller part later.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, maybe one small point. Actually, I think couple of weeks back, we had this fortune of having association of His Grace Govinda Devi Mataji.
Yeah.
So, as you said, Prabhuji, the conviction of Prabhupada can be seen in his disciples throughout. And Mataji's conviction was also like so strong that she narrated all her experiences with Śrīla Prabhupada. Prabhupada during that time itself, like 50 years back, predicted that America will have a downfall in terms of economic. I mean the depression or whatever we call.
Yeah.
So Mataji was actually directly telling that please develop as many farm communities and support as many temples as possible, because those are the only means of shelter in this uncertain world which is like upcoming. So she was also telling that farm communities like Simhachalam should be supported because people can take shelter in the toughest times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, even when Mahavishnu Maharaj came here, when he was sitting in the backyard, he was also seeing, you have nice garden, you can start cultivating something. And I remember even Kadamkaran Maharaj was saying like, when the time will come, people start realizing now, when COVID situations, if you have your own garden, you don't need anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, Mataji was telling that invest in, I mean, people who want financial thing, do invest always in silver or gold to keep yourself protected, but don't invest in anything else.
Say again.
Mataji was saying that invest in silver or gold. I mean, for protection. I mean, economic protection, because of the whatever turmoil that can come in future.
We have here experts. Satish Prabhu will tell later. But yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a buffet here.
So Prabhuji, maybe we take this opportunity to wish Rupa Mataji.
Yeah, she's not here, so
Okay.
yeah, maybe you can ring up later, or
Okay.
we have at the moment Adresa Prabhu and Sesha Prabhu.
Okay.
Because of Deepali Mataji, because of this, what is it? Varalakshmi Vratam.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.